Hello, and welcome to another of several presentations about ethics. I'm your host, Ryan Segrist, and this series is brought to you by the USDA Office of Ethics. We're happy to answer all of your questions. Please go ahead and contact us at the conclusion of this presentation. Today, we showcase the STOCK Act, an acronym for the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act. If you haven't heard of it before, the STOCK Act was passed in 2012 in response to allegations of congressional leadership profiting from insider knowledge during the lead-up and fallout of the 2008 Great Recession. The allegations were that Congress used knowledge not available to the general public to profit from the crisis. The provisions that Congress crafted were also made applicable to executive branch employees, meaning you. All of the distinct provisions of the STOCK Act apply to executive-level employees at USDA. If you have to file a public financial disclosure report, then you are an executive-level employee. But if you file an OGE Form 450 instead of an OGE Form 278, then the following rules are not applicable to you. Once you're promoted to the SES or receive a presidential appointment, please feel free to call us for advice and counsel. The first provision of the STOCK Act applies to all public financial disclosure filers. Once you begin negotiating for future employment or for future compensation, you need to report this to your leadership and the ethics office in writing within 3 days. Because you are an executive level leader, you are subject to much more scrutiny than other employees. As such, we need to be sure you don't violate the Conflicts of Interest statute. We'll advise you of the need to recuse yourself from any portions of your work if necessary. For extra protection, give us a call before you begin to look for outside employment so we can advise you of needed recusals and any restrictions that will apply after you leave USDA. In response to allegations that congressional leaders often got sweetheart access to the initial public offerings, or IPOs, of companies entering the stock market, Congress clarified that congressional members and executive branch employees who file OGE Form 278 public financial disclosure reports may not participate in IPOs in ways not available to the general public. In other words, you may only participate if any other person gets the same access. As such, if you're ever approached about participating in an IPO that is not available to the general public, please call the Office of Ethics as soon as possible. The next provision of the STOCK Act is a trickier one to understand. In essence, it provides ethics officials and the general public a much more transparent snapshot of the financial holdings of covered officials than the old system of merely filing annual 278 reports. Now, you need to report certain kinds of financial transactions in accordance with a strict timeline throughout the year, rather than annually. This new reporting is done using the 278T transaction report. What sort of things must be reported? You need to report transactions over $1,000 in stocks, bonds, options, commodities, and other securities. You do not need to report any publicly traded mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, or unit investment trusts. The timeline for reporting is ongoing. You need to report the transactions within 30 days of being notified of the transactions and not later than 45 days after the transactions occurred. Use whichever is earliest. For example, if you bought a new stock today and received a confirmation email tomorrow, you would have 30 days from tomorrow to file a 278T report. If you receive a statement that your broker bought a stock for you 35 days ago, you would have 10 days to report it. The easiest way to think about this is to just submit a 278T report as soon as you can. And don't hesitate to call if you are confused about what to report or when to report it. We are happy to help you understand what you need to do to be in compliance. Once you file, the financial disclosure systems used by USDA will pre-populate your annual reports with information from your transaction reports. After the reports are received and reviewed, they will be publicly available. The next provision applies only to those leaders who have been appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. They are required to report the mortgages on their personal residences on their annual 278 reports in the liability section. And if you have more than one residence, you need to report all of your mortgages. You are also required to report any home equity loans on these residences and any home equity lines of credit that have been exercised. The reason is to ensure that you're not getting a special deal on your mortgage or other loans as a result of your very senior position. Thanks for joining us in this introduction to the Stock Act rules and how you might be affected by it. Don't forget that the Ethics Office is always here to answer your specific questions about this relatively new law. Our staff is specially trained to be experts in this and all of the other ethics provisions for federal employees. In the meantime, have a great and productive day.